Good morning. My name is David Cornett. I'm with Jacobs Engineering, and we are working with TxDOT to do the 36A corridor study. I have a number of members of my team here with Jacobs Engineering sitting back here at this table, as well as our TxDOT project manager, Mr. Carrington Wright. So when I'm done, or after the meeting, we'll all be around. We'll be able to answer any questions that I may leave you hanging with here, but we need to go through this, some of this information relatively quickly so that we can get on to the important information the Congressman will be providing us. 36A corridor study was initially envisioned by HGAC and promoted by them as part of their freight mobility study. They looked, big picture, we had one of those showing up here earlier that went all the way from the Port of Freeport north, connecting up to Highway 6 going toward Waco or to I-10. And so the southern segment generally followed an existing Highway 36 from Port Freeport north to I-69, and then they proposed a new segment that would go from I-69 to I-10 up toward the Highway 6 corridor that eventually became what is known as 36A. It is not State Highway 36. It has not been designated yet as a state highway, but 36A would be the section then from I-69 to I-10 to the 290 corridor. We were engaged by TxDOT, and during early meetings, we've quickly learned that we really need to develop this as two segments, one from I-69 to I-10, and then a second from I-10 to 290. These are two segments of independent utility that we're working on, and we've got TxDOT to approve that change so that we have a south segment that actually is looking at an area all the way down to tie into State Highway 36 near Needville, going across I-69 and up to I-10, and a northern segment that then would be proposed from I-10 to Highway 290. We continue to have stakeholder engagement for both of these segments. This is known as a pre-NOI or pre-notice of intent activities. We haven't formally issued a notice of intent that we're going to do an environmental study to develop these two routes. HGAC recently adopted both 36A and 36A North, or 36A South and 36A North, to add them to the 2045 RTP. There is not a proposed route designated for either of these segments. So I know there's been concern voiced before about, well, where's the road going to go? Are you going to follow existing 36? Are you going up this farm road? Are you going to follow this FM road? Whatever. There is not a route designated. We will continue to work closely with all of the stakeholders. We will work to try to avoid our natural and our built environments, wetlands, the properties the KPC has set aside, as well as homes, businesses, subdivisions, parks, schools, churches, and such. And we'll continue to work with our local officials to complement any of the transportation plans that they have. So if you have any questions that you'd like to know, we're still a year and a half away or so from issuing our notice of intent to do the environmental impact statement, but I'll be glad to answer questions further as we get on down the route here. So with that, I will turn it back over to Robert, and you're going to introduce another speaker, it looks like.
I appreciate it, David. With that, we're going to move on to the Port of Freeport. Phil Saloff, the CEO of the port, is here to give a quick update.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. Good to see all of you. While haven't seen you in person, that hasn't meant that Port Freeport hasn't been busy doing great things. So I know you've heard some updates from Jason Mura, some of you virtually on some of your recent meetings, but thought I would share a few things with you. COVID, slowed a lot of things down, but it didn't slow the port down. We continued to aggressively pursue our capital expansion programs, and I'm proud to report that our berth construction that we initiated before COVID is on schedule, and we're about a year away from completing that. That's a 927-foot extension of berth at our container handling facility. And then in May of this year, the Port Commission authorized a change order to that contract to add a roll-on, roll-off ramp to that contract at the end of that berth. So we that combined, that project's about $140 million that we're investing in our facilities because we've seen such tremendous growth at the port. And the roll-on, roll-off sector has been one of those areas that has grown rapidly for us. We entered that segment of business back in 2015 and started 3 or 4 Ro-Ro vessels a month carrying automobiles and high and heavy equipment. And now we regularly see, our slow month is 10 and can see 12 to 13 a month regularly, and a peak has been 15 vessels in a month. And we feel that there's still continued opportunity for us to expand in that segment of business for ports. So we're pretty excited about that. We're optimistic that we'll be able to bring additional business to Port Freeport in that area. During the COVID, the steel business slowed down a bit, but I'm proud to report that has picked back up. It's above pre-COVID pandemic levels, and that means that our facility in Bay City that's fabricating steel pipe is up and running. You know, it's one of the most modern in the world, if not the most modern, and that's good for our region and for the state of Texas. We also continued during COVID to aggressively pursue, the deepening and partial widening of our channel, and successfully, right at the beginning of the pandemic, received our New Start designation, our initial construction funding. And in 2021, we received some additional funding in the core work plan, but proud to report that this month we will be completing the first segment of our channel project. And actually we're putting into service this weekend a portion of it. We've had some limitations of moving vessels in and out of our container terminal because we didn't have the federal channel as deep as our berth, and it is now, so that means we don't have to sequence vessels in and out of that. We'll be able to move freely all vessels in and out of our container terminal while we're operating and discharging aggregate at our deep berth 6. So that's a really positive development. We'll be going back out for the core bill, advertising for bid the next segment, which will be around the bend, which will create the widening that we need in the narrowest part of the channel. We expect the contract to be let probably in October and that work to begin later this fall. So we're excited about that. So we'll be able to report to you in the near future that we have 2 segments of our project completed, and we're near complete with the design and engineering of the remaining segments of the channel. So our message is to Congress, to OMB and the administration, we're ready, fund us, and we'll finish this project quickly. That's really what we'll need now is the steady flow of funds, or if they'll fund us to completion, we can execute that in a single contract. So we're excited about where we're at with that. It was a 5-year construction management plan, but it looks like we have potential to complete early, but I do feel like we'll complete on time. But we're watching the appropriations bills closely and the infrastructure packages they're talking about, because it looks like the Corps of Engineers will get a bump up in both of those, which will give us opportunities to compete for funds and bring those to Texas. So things are great. We're now 15th in the nation overall in foreign waterborne tonnage, still 6th in the nation in chemicals movement. That's significant. We've really come a long ways, because we were, about 26th in the nation not that long ago in overall foreign waterborne tonnage. So, and we expect to continue to rise in those rankings. Freeport LNG, has all 3 of their liquefaction units in operation, and they have some great markets right now and moving, 17, 18 cargoes, export cargoes a month now. So that we haven't had a full year of Freeport LNG exports calculated into our tonnages. So we feel like that's really going to make a difference for us in international rankings. So Port Freeport is growing, and we're excited about those opportunities, and we're also excited that TxDOT is letting this month they're supposedly letting several contracts in and around the port. Highway 36 widening from FA 1495, which is at one of our gates, to the diversion channel bridge. That contract will be let, that widening will start, and I believe they're letting the contract for the segment south of City of Brazoria to Jones Creek. That one will let, I think, in October. And then there's a project to replace a bridge on FM 1495 that leads to the port. That contract will be let this month. And then I learned just recently they're planning to repave the section of 1495 from the Pine Street Bridge to 36 with concrete paving. So we're going to be busy with construction activity in and around the port and our major roadways to the port, which will make it'll make it a little more challenging for us to manage traffic efficiently in and out of our gates for some time. But we'll work with TxDOT and with our partners and make sure that we take good care of our customers and keep everything safe. That's the priority. That was quick, and I know you wanted me to limit it to 5 minutes. I probably went over, but thank you for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, now the reason that we're all here to hear our good congressman speak. So he does not need an introduction, but I do want to give one to him. Congressman Nehls, our former sheriff. He's our Republican representative for the Texas 22nd District. And he was sworn in on January 3rd, 2021, and he drew national attention and praise for defending the House chamber during the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol. So thank you, Congressman.
Oh, no worries.
He serves on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, where he focuses his time and efforts on mobility and flood-related issues, and he serves on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, where he focuses on issues relating to serving and protecting our veterans. So without further ado, Congressman Nehls.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Robert. I'm looking forward to the next 15 minutes, talk about immigration and defund the police. Jeremy, isn't that what you want me to talk about today? No, I tell you, Robert mentioned Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, something very important. Worked very hard to get on that committee, because you can see right now a great deal of time and attention in our nation's capital is dealing with infrastructure. So we're working hard. Back in the month of July, that's when the House passed its first highway bill. And now what you see is the Senate side. They're negotiating with their version of a infrastructure bill, a surface transportation bill. There's all sorts of different names for this thing, but I kind of like to refer to it and reference it as an infrastructure bill. My opinion of infrastructure is roads, bridges, rebar, asphalt, concrete. Yeah? Yes? Projects that can help the people and facilitate economic growth. And boy, oh boy, do people love Fort Bend County. And I know we got Mayor Coe here from Pearland. A lot of people are moving into Brazoria County, but people like moving into this county. I think they see the school districts. They feel we have great school districts. I think people can feel safe, and people like to get to and fro, back and forth to work. They don't want to have a 59 and 610 in Fort Bend County or in this district, and we can't have that happen. So more and more people are moving into this county because of their ability to maneuver, and again, the schools and the safety of the communities we have. But we have to be able to maintain, we have to keep up with that growth. I think we're doing good with that. I work very, very closely as it relates to the Commissioner's Court with Vincent Morales, so he does a very good job, and I know that he deals a lot with the infrastructure issues in Fort Bend County. So that's my opinion as it relates to how I define infrastructure. Creates jobs both in construction and the long term, but sadly in Washington we can't even agree on that. Infrastructure does not mean climate. It doesn't. Human infrastructure, I've heard of that. Have you seen that in Webster, human infrastructure? And that's what really you want in their infrastructure bills is about climate. And there are three pieces I think that we need to keep track of, three areas here. It's the House infrastructure bill, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, it's $547 billion. And then the Senate infrastructure bill, and they call this the BIF. The BIF stands for Bipartisan Infrastructure Network. So if you hear me refer to BIF, that's what I'm referencing. And then there's a bill, it's called reconciliation. And that's something that I'm truly, truly concerned about because Congress gets 2 or 3 opportunities every year for reconciliation. And the first major bill that we passed was at $1.9 trillion. It was the American Rescue Plan. It had a whole lot of nonsense in it, and we're paying for it today. I couldn't support it. There was not another Republican that supported that American Rescue Plan. And it was $1.9 trillion, and now we're paying for it because all that money that we are just giving people through stimulus, and I feel for those that are struggling as it relates to COVID. Rightfully so, we need to help those people. But we just started handing out checks to just about everybody, right? We're extending unemployment, giving people $300 extra every week. And now we have job creators out there, and I'm sure there are some in this room that are trying to get their people back to work. Job creators are now competing with the federal government to get people back to work. And that's just how dangerous this American Rescue Plan is, and that's why you couldn't find one Republican to support it. I did not support the House version, the $547 billion. I couldn't do it. We had hearings on infrastructure. The majority brought in a lot of labor executives. They wanted to, and what it is that the House version is just really a war on fossil fuels is what it is. It's all about Green New Deal. In June, so back in June, the Democrats finally released the text. I got the text, by the way, 48 hours prior to the markup. And what I mean by the markup, that's when you go in there and you just kind of just butcher up the bill, try to add some amendments. It was a boondoggle. It was $547 billion in total spending, and very little of it went to roads. It was totally focused on climate, and it wasn't an infrastructure bill. It was a climate bill. And why do I say that? The word climate appeared 96 times. Emissions appeared 184 times, and greenhouse gases 101 times. That's infrastructure, isn't it? Half of the money, the $547 billion, $273.5 billion, will be spent on programs called for in the Green New Deal. I don't think this is what America needs to recover from COVID. So the Republican, our version of the bill, under our great ranking member, his name is Sam Graves. He's a very brilliant man, been in the House for several years. He is our ranking member, and he will be the chair of T&I in 16 months when we get the House back. We talked about more real infrastructure and finding ways to cut through some of the red tape. The permitting process, for example. 20 to 30% of all the money that you put into these bills is lost because of red tape. It takes years. The environmental studies, you got to make sure that there's not a woodpecker that's offended. And all of this other stuff, it just takes years. Canada and other countries are far more efficient and effective at getting projects started and finished and getting them on time. And our permitting process and stuff, in studies, it takes years to get it done. And then you have the cost of all the goods, the asphalt, concrete, all that. It just raises the cost. And next thing you know, the $500 million we needed now is going to cost about $800 million because you have too many Washington bureaucrats making decisions. And there's not enough local control. That is a problem for me. Local flexibility. We wanted to see more local flexibility. And what I mean by that is I think Texas, we know where the roads need to be in this district. Yes, we do. Not a bureaucrat in Washington. It's giving state and local government more flexibility, leads to more efficient projects, and more importantly, is building projects where people need them. A guy up in Washington, D.C. probably doesn't even know where Fort Bend County is and certainly doesn't know about the issues that we have as it relates to mobility. Highway 36, a good example. The plan for Highway 36A. So why are we allowing them to make decisions? And we really want to focus on real infrastructure. Our bill would have built roads and bridges, not create hundreds of Green New Deal programs that will tie up your hands with environmental regulations. So it came time for the markup. I was excited about it. I had a couple amendments in there. I show up at the hearing, but I didn't realize I should have brought my sleeping bag and a toothbrush. Because most markup hearings like this, usually, you get all this stuff settled beforehand. You get the negotiations. The ranking member sits with the chair and they talk about all this stuff. And we were in there for 19 hours. We started at 10 and finished at 5 a.m. on June 10th. We proposed dozens of amendments, and very few got through. One of my colleagues proposed an amendment that would have allowed for disabled people to use ATVs on fire roads in national forests. That was voted down. Another proposed an amendment that wouldn't have allowed any money in the electric vehicle charging network program established by the bill from going to contracts with companies that use child labor. That amendment was voted down. Another would have prohibited transit funds from being used to put in art displays at bus and metro stations. That's where you want your tax dollars to go. So somebody's riding a bus, you got to have something really nice in there to make it look like the Smithsonian, apparently. That was voted down. I proposed an amendment that would have prevented municipalities that defund their police departments from using National Highway Traffic Safety Administration grants to backfill their operations budget. That was voted down. I'm thinking, wait a minute here. Austin, they have a $450 million budget. They don't like, I guess, in the name of social justice, so we're going to cut the police budget by $150 million, a third of it. So if that city council is going to say we're going to cut the budget by a third, why should that same city be able to apply for federal grant dollars to support their police department? You shouldn't be getting anything. Shame on you. But it was voted down. It was struck down. And it was just very, very, very partisan. Anything really with an R after it, or an amendment by a Republican, we weren't very successful. This is an interesting one. Clear Channel road font on road signs across the great state of Texas and in 20 other states. There is a bureaucrat I probably don't need it. So miles and miles and miles of roads we have in this great state of ours. And we use this Clear Channel, this font on the road. And I think, can everybody, when you travel down to Needville and go up to Dallas, can you read a road sign day or night and be able to know where you need to go? Well, there's a guy in Washington, a bureaucrat, that says he doesn't like the font of that sign, and he wants it changed. I said, oh, hell no. I actually went to the room down on that one too. Millions of dollars, and in the end, it will cost millions, because can you imagine changing a sign that's on an overpass at Highway 59? You're going to have to do it at 2 in the morning. You better shut down about 3 lanes of traffic to have guys on a cherry picker moving these big, big signs. And it's just going to cost money. It's irresponsible. And who comes up with this? So I went to the Rules Committee and I showed the channel view versus the somebody in DOT in Washington once. And you really couldn't tell the difference. But this is when people have way too much time on their hands. Who comes up with this? I was so frustrated in the Rules Committee, I said, are we actually having this conversation? And I hope that, I know you've probably, but now I know why the American people are sick and tired of the government. You know, and I'm here to help? Really? And so these are some of the silly things that we experienced in this $547 billion package. And I couldn't support it. I could not support it. And I didn't, quite obviously. So now the Senate version, they're looking at theirs. It's $1.1 trillion as what we know today. It's 1.1 or 1.2 trillion. Now, sometime in the middle of the day, maybe 11 Eastern, maybe around noon Eastern time, the Senate is actually going to go on the House floor and they're going to vote for it. You heard, if you've been watching this, paying attention, they said they had 17 Republicans. Well, that was some type of a procedural rule there that had to be able to move this thing forward. Right now, there may be 11 senators that may support it. And it's about $1.1, $1.2 trillion. I don't think you're going to have Senator Cruz support it. I don't know. I think Senator Cornyn was supporting it. I'll have to find out today if he does or he doesn't. I would probably ask him not to, right? Because currently, I mean, it's a couple thousand pages. And there's a lot in there. There's a lot in there that really does not deal with infrastructure. It's more Green New Deal. But this is what I think is going to happen in the end. Thank you, Jeremy. This is, I think, what you're going to see with this process. This bill is going to get through the Senate. It's very tight. It's a 50-50 Senate. It's going to get through the Senate. But it's going to come over to the House. And Nancy's not going to like it. If Nancy says, okay, we could do this, but you're going to have to put Joe Biden's American Families and Jobs Plan, and that's the $3.5 trillion. That's $3.5 trillion. Biden's Families and Jobs Plan deals with all sorts of stuff as it relates to Medicaid expansion, certainly benefits the big unions out there. And it's free college. It's everything that really, I think McConnell said, or Schumer said, it's everything Biden really has asked for. I'm concerned about that, as we all should be. But in my opinion, what Nancy's going to do, she's going to hold up on getting this $1.2 trillion plan from the Senate side. She's going to want to couple that bill with this $3.5 trillion, and they're going to do it through reconciliation. Folks, they don't need a Republican to do it. They don't need a Republican to do it. They passed the American Rescue Plan without a Republican. And I think they're going to do the same here. So there's a lot of negotiations taking place right now. I don't know if Nancy, Speaker Pelosi, calls us back. Right now we're in August recess. It's really August recess and pretty much the whole month of September. We don't go back in until September 21st, and you should appreciate when members of Congress are here because we're not spending money. You would rather have the congressmen back in their districts because we're not spending money. So I'm a little concerned right now looking at this 2,200-page document. We haven't taken a deep dive into it, but what I've heard, what I've seen, talked about, I don't believe that I would be able to support this bill in its current form. And that can be very, very frustrating because we need to have more roads. We need to improve the roads. We need to use the technology that's available to help move traffic through our cities, whether it's Sugar Land, whether it's Pearland, dealing with just controlling lights and looking at, drive times and when are the roads occupied by the most vehicles, in the morning and in the evening, people going to and from work. So we're looking at all that. I feel that my first 8 months, we've been quite successful. And I say successful because we're in the minority. You know how difficult things are to get done in the minority? Very, very difficult. I worked hard with Commissioner Morales to secure some funding for this road out here. And there's $20 million coming our way to expand this 36 here down to Pleak. So I think that's good. You're seeing Highway 36. It's already being expanded to 4 lanes further. all the way going into Brazoria County. But I feel good about securing some funding for that. I know that Mayor Cole, we got a couple $1 million for the Smith Ranch Road. I feel good about that. And then I know we received about $3 million for the Alvin area FM 528. So as a freshman, I can say that I'm doing everything that I can within my abilities to provide infrastructure improvement, even talking about some flood mitigation up there in Katy. But I tell you, with all honesty, life will be so much easier when we're in the majority. And this project you're talking about with Highway 36A, and I talk to people, you know, trying to lobby for some of the funding for these roads. I said, this stretch of road right out here, between here and Needville, in my opinion, is Sheriff's most dangerous road in the county. When we have a crash out here, it's a bad one. There's so many roads going in and off out of Highway 36, and so many trucks using this road. It's a very dangerous road. I don't like driving on it. Very dangerous road. And I say probably we have more fatalities here than we do on 59, in my opinion. And I'm telling you that as a sheriff for 8 years. So something needs to be done with this, and I'm glad that finally TxDOT, they're doing something. So I believe I have a pretty good grasp on issues related to infrastructure, and yes, 99 has some issues. It would be nice to be able to, try to go up to Perry's at 5 o'clock on dinner. If you want to go have wine at 5 o'clock with your bride, try to get on 99 to see if you're not getting up there without stopping in the middle of 99. So there are some other areas and issues that need to be addressed, and I'm working hard. I'll do everything I can to address those. But I said I've only been there 8 months, folks. I just found out where the bathroom was. So anyway, I'm working it. I don't want to bore anybody with anything else, but if there's time, I don't know, Jeremy, is there a question type thing? If they want, hopefully I will be able to answer it. If anybody has a question, maybe there's something that I didn't cover. This will be a interesting.
I'll ask you a question. If you're a senator and you vote to move the bill along, in essence, you're voting for the bill, in my opinion. Don't let them tell you they're going to vote to move it along and vote against it. The final vote, the real vote, is the vote to move it along. Correct?
Well, I think you should call Senator Cornyn's office. I'm just telling you right now, I am one of those fiscal conservative guys, and I don't like seeing the way our this administration is spending money. And our country needs prayer right now. It needs strong leadership, and we don't have it. If you follow me on social media, yes, I throw a lot of bombs out there. I drop an enormous amount of bombs. But I think the bombs that I drop are very effective, because whether it's the southern border, whether it's the spending, whether it's defunding the police, whether you see what's happening in our United States military, we have some serious issues to deal with. Our current president, I don't know. I always say be careful what you wish for here, whether he's cognitive test or not. She's more dangerous than he is. She's more dangerous than he is. Something to consider. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Felicia Harris Hospital coming out. And you talked about us taking over the House and which I look forward to so I hope that we can accomplish that. My question stems from the fact that we now have a group of Texas legislators who decided not to come back for the special session, which we all know redistricting is part of the process that's going on. So in your opinion, can you give us from your perspective the impact, if any, to the redistricting process, the delay of the primaries, and how that might bump up against the general in November, and what impact that may have on Texas?
If you go back and look at 2010, we had Tom DeLay. There were some issues as it related to redistricting, and we moved the primaries from March to May. And it seems like now, I received some information the other day, and if somebody else knows something else, please tell me, but I was thinking they may move it from March to May right now, but I think that the census and all the information, we're going to have it by September. I know that as it relates to drawing our lines, the state legislature, they draw their their little state rep lines, and then we move into the congressional lines. We're getting 2 more. I know that, believe it or not, we all have a lawyer. We all have I said, why in the hell do I need a lawyer? Well, it's redistricting. You see what happened 10 years ago? So we all have a lawyer, and we're looking at 22. We're looking at all of them. I think that when the Governor Abbott calls these special sessions, and I believe they're for 30 days, he's not going to stop calling special sessions. And I think these Democrats are going to have to come back. I think it's shameful the way they play their antics and their games. And quite honestly, I was madder than a wet hen when they're going up there and they're talking about care packages and the sacrifices to their families. Really? You got a 12-pack of beer on the plane. You want to look at sacrifice, go to Walter Reed and look at sacrifice. It's an insult to everyone that's ever worn the uniform, the military uniform, when you want to talk about sacrifice. And they're going up there, staying in fancy hotels, eating nice food, and they're talking about sacrifice and please send us a care package. And what are they getting? Is it a couple $100 a day? I just feel for them. Matter of fact, let's all get a GoFundMe account and send them some money. No, I think Beto did that. Didn't he send them a few $100,000? They need to get back to Texas. And quite honestly, I'm an old lawman. I thought to myself, yeah, I'd like to put cuffs on every one of them. Put cuffs on every one of them. You saw even one of our local guys. He got arrested today in the name of, I guess, what, social justice? He didn't like it. We have to protect our elections in this state. We have to protect our elections. I support the governor and what he's been doing as it relates, but ma'am, I don't know if I can really answer your question other than they have a duty and responsibility to the people that elected them to get back in here and conduct business. But they're running away. That's what they did 10 years ago when they went to Ardmore, Oklahoma, and that's what they're doing now. And I think they should be ashamed of themselves, and I hope that the voters truly see them for who they really are. I think they're cowards. Cowards. I know you're filming me. You can say, Congressman said they're cowards. There. My take on it. Anything else? I want to add, I want to leave with this, Jeremy, okay? There's an enormous amount of conversation taking place right now as it relates to January 6th. And you all need to truly understand exactly what happened. I think it is incumbent upon Congress, both sides, to give the American people the true story about what really happened. Yes, I had my times there. I was in the chamber and at the back doors. I know there were different pictures, this and that. So there was this committee that was set up. Initially, we didn't support the idea of this committee because it did not include, Nancy said, there's no Republican staffers on it, just Democrat staffers. We said, that's not going to work. So I voted against the first commission or committee. Well, then, through negotiations, she got to choose 8, and Leader McCarthy got to choose 5. So Nancy selected her 8. Well, who's one of the 8? Liz Cheney. And then she also picked another one, another Republican. Leader McCarthy had 5 selections, and he chose his 5. I had an idea he was kind of looking at me for that committee because he pulled me aside a couple weeks prior at a lunch. He said, Troy, I want you to read that Senate report. The Senate report. The first hearings on January 6th started back in February and March on the Senate side, Homeland Security and House Rules and Admin, and they interviewed all sorts of people. They interviewed the chief of police. They interviewed the National Guard Commander, General Walker. They interviewed Stanger. He's the Senate Sergeant at Arms, and Irving, the House Sergeant at Arms. They interviewed all sorts of people. They dove into the assessments and the intelligence with the Capitol Police. And this document is 95 pages plus. And so McCarthy asked me to take a deep dive, and I did. I spent 10 days on it. Mr. Gribble and I, Daniel, he works for me. I would probably say he and I know more about January 6th than anybody. Because we spent an enormous amount of time on it. And so McCarthy was asking me to look at this because I think he looked at my law enforcement experience. Then the day came and he said, Troy, I want you to be on that committee, which was truly an honor because I was the only freshman. I'm thinking, I'm hanging out with Jim Jordan. He's Jim Banks, he's fantastic. Rodney Davis is the ranking member of House Admin. And Kelly Armstrong is an old federal prosecutor, smarter than hell. I'm thinking, I'm around some bright people. And I'm looking forward to serving on this committee. And then Nancy rejects Jim Banks, and she rejected Jim Jordan. I'm thinking, well, why did she do that? Well, I think you guys can all answer your question. Why did she do that? There's a lot of questions that she may not want to answer. Yes, people said, well, why did they reject those two? Because they said, she's rejecting those two because they objected to some of the electors. Well, I objected to Arizona, and I objected to Pennsylvania, and I feel good about my decision, but she kept me. She said somebody, well, I think she told CNN, well, he's a sheriff, and he seemed like he could bring some value to the committee. But I don't blame Leader McCarthy for saying that we're not participating at all. You get all 5 or you get 0. It's the first time in 230 years where the House Speaker has rejected a minority leader's picks to serve on a select committee. The first time. It's never happened. It's never happened. So the chairman of it right now says Nancy Pelosi's off. You're not touching her. Good old Benny. Benny says she's off the table. So my point is this. I am going to continue to work with the committee on our side via Leader McCarthy says, Troy, we have to look at this. We're taking a deep dive into January 6th. And because we owe it to the American people, I feel I owe it to you. You have a right to know, why did that happen? Why was the Capitol Police, why were the Capitol Police so ill-prepared to deal with January 6th? And some of the information that I've discovered, I said, is just very, very alarming. The intelligence was there. It was all there. There were just people that didn't take it very seriously. There was a delay in the responding to the response with the National Guard. That needs to be looked at. And so we're going to look at it all. And you're going to see over the next several months while this committee, this partisan sham, they're not seeking the truth, folks. This is all about Donald Trump, and it's all about midterm elections. You're going to get nothing out of that committee right now in its current form. And I think that's sad, and I think Speaker Pelosi, you've made a big, big mistake here, because you're not seeking the truth, and there's a reason why. There's a reason why, and I'm going to find that reason. Anyway, God bless you all, and thank you for your time.
While we do some house cleaning, and get Debbie Dealing is going to go around and get business cards. Congressman, we got a gift for you. On behalf of the 36A Coalition, thank you very much for the sacrifices you and your family and your staff made.